It's Monday, January 20th. I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast. And it is absolutely a hell of a day to talk ball because the divisional round is in the books. I would say that the divisional round absolutely delivered on the promise of it being the best weekend in football. And joining me to talk a little ball, to talk a little divisional round takeaways, it is, of course, my good pal, Andy Behrens. Andy, what's going on, buddy?
That was a great weekend. These are all messy games, right? We didn't get a perfect game out of any of this, but they were, we had a couple of beautiful weather games. Mistakes were made along the way. Teams overcame those mistakes. What a fun weekend. I don't know that we don't have an all-time team this season, and it makes it fun. This was a joy. I mean, you could look at the 8 teams that were in action this last weekend, and you could have made a case for almost any of them making it to the Super Bowl and being the ultimate champion this season. I don't know. Seasons like that are just absolutely fun to me. I have no idea who's going to win this thing.
I love the way you set that up because, number one, F perfect, forget perfect. This was beautiful in its own way, right? All of the snow that we saw, the weather I thought was great. It adds a fun wrinkle to things. And yeah, that's a great point about these, and we're going to talk about all the winners. We're going to talk about all the losers here, but it's a great point about these teams that they're all so different and some of them are a little strange, right?
Yes.
Certainly, when we talk about some of these teams, some of them are strange, and they're, like I said, very, very different. There are teams that are in totally different areas of their timelines, of their builds, and obviously the way that we discuss them after a loss or a win in the playoffs are going to kind of be that's going to be tied into it, right? So I think it's going to be super fascinating to break all this down with you. I'm really excited to do it. Let's just jump right into it. And first segment here. This is the bangers only. Okay, I think the 2 best games of the weekend were Bills Ravens and Commanders Lions. So those are the first 2 games that we're going to start with. But let's start with the game that went final most recently, which was Bills 27, Ravens 25. As we always do with these postseason recaps, we're going to start with the winner. Andy, Buffalo Bills win this game. I want to take you into hypothetical land here for just a second. Let's spin this clock back a few years ago. Let's just say 2021. Okay. If I told 2021 Andy Behrens that the Buffalo Bills won a playoff game when Josh Allen threw 22 passes, what would your reaction have been?
Yeah, that's something. I don't this is such a funny Bills team. I don't know that this is the best Bills team that we've seen in these last 3 or 4 years, right? Which is part of what makes this season so great. I guess I would have allowed for that possibility given the chances that we could always get a super messy weather game in Buffalo. This wasn't that. It was just, the weather was messy enough to make it look pretty. But it wasn't, I don't know that it really hindered play to a great extent. It certainly wasn't what we saw in Philadelphia. Right. So yeah, that'd be a pretty big shock. It's just, man, Josh Allen's ability to control a game any number of ways, and his willingness to be a quarterback who just gets wins and just does the thing that is necessary on the day has become really impressive. He was obviously a component of a great run game against. That is, if there's one thing that I really didn't see coming in this game, it's Buffalo running for almost 150 yards against the league's #1 run defense. Super impressive, and obviously Allen was a big part of that.
Yeah, I set it up that way because I think it's very indicative of where this Bills team is right now. And, I know this, it gets framed as if this Bills season was supposed to be a reset year or something like that. I don't know. I never personally really bought into that. I picked the Bills as the clear-cut best team in their division. I didn't really see a big drop-off from their offense. On Football 301, I had them as a they're definitely top 10 offense. I think I had them somewhere between 6 to 8. This is an offense that I maybe back half. It was probably back half of the top 10, but still, I never really thought this team was going to take a big step back. So I don't personally buy into that framing, but still, if you want to frame it that way, the fact that this is probably the most complete Bills team, even if maybe it's not the best Bills team. I think it's probably the most well-rounded. That's why I kind of frame it that way of that, yeah, Josh Allen threw 22 passes. They win this game. They led for most of the affair, and I think it kind of actually makes sense. And, I want to start with what you mentioned with the run game where, that was the biggest surprise to me. I thought that this would be like a Josh Allen matriculate the ball down the field, like short passes and things like that. I didn't think they'd be able to establish the run. They did. And over these last two playoff games, the Bills have a success rate in both games of north of 50% running the ball against the two best run defenses in the NFL this past season, which was Baltimore and Denver. So this is 2 straight weeks in a row. And this is why I was kind of getting a little... Tony Romo, don't even get me started. But like I was like rolling my eyes with Romo late in this game when he's alternating between trying to make his let James Cook pun happen as if he's the first person. The first person that definitely thought of that. No one's ever said that before. He kept trying to make that happen, but then alternating between that and they got to put the ball, put the game in Josh Allen's hands. I don't even know if Tony Romo likes football. I think he just likes quarterbacks. Because I was like, what are you talking about, man? Like they're running the piss out of the ball. They're running all over this Baltimore team, and James Cook is balling out to the point that you're trying to make his name pun happen. So I don't know. That feels very what the Bills have been this year, which is a well-rounded offense and certainly defense as well.
Yeah, and the supporting backs, Ray Davis was great here. Ty Johnson was great here. Ty Johnson, really making an impression, I think, in the playoffs. And Josh Allen, I guess the least efficient rushing element for the Bills, but man, just an overall really, really impressive day. James Cook was obviously awesome. And I didn't see this coming. Like of all the ways to attack the Ravens and of all the ways in which I thought Buffalo might be able to win this game, running it down the throat of, again, the number one run defense in the league is not that's not the path that I thought Buffalo would choose. Super impressive. And we caught hints of it in the previous week against Denver, right? That was a game plan that was almost curious given the opponent. But it obviously worked in the Denver game. And if it was a dress rehearsal for what they were going to do with Baltimore, well done. This is an opponent against whom maybe you do want to shorten the game, right? Maybe you do want to try to control clock. You want to grind them down, and it was super effective. This game was just really fun in a lot of respects. And, when Buffalo did go to the air, maybe some of this is weather conditions, field conditions. It was mostly Khalil Shakir. I thought he was great in this one. I think he's great every week, but I thought he was spectacular in this one. They did not get a lot, looking at the box score right now, it didn't hit me in real time, but man, other than Shakir, Curtis Samuel, the only other Bills receiver to even catch multiple passes, he caught 2 for 9 yards. So it was mostly the Shakir show.
We were deep into the game before Keon Coleman or Amari Cooper were even targeted. They tried to. I think they probably had it was a run play where you could alert to that Keon Coleman slant. And credit to the Ravens pass defense, those guys were hitting all night. They were really trying to limit those explosive yards after catch opportunities, because that Keon Coleman 5-yard slant play, that felt like one of the ones where Allen likes the pre-snap look. He can say, okay, Coleman, and he tries to hit it for a big run after catch play, which I love when Keon Coleman gets running on those in breaking routes. But they were just on it there. With Shakir, he had the 34-yard catch. That was their only play of 20-plus yards. And other than that, though, when they tried to get him those little layup catches and run after the catch, and he had a couple of them, but he never ripped multiple tackle breaks or anything like that, because they were, like I said, really coming up and nailing these guys on defense overall. Man. The Bills offense,
something near and dear to your heart that I just want to shout out, the run blocking of the Bills receivers was great all day. I think
the entire Bills, just the way they run block in general, there's a lot of buy-in from the entire team. Every game, and maybe it's just because his team is playing and I'm fresh off it, I just come away thinking Joe Brady is one of the best, if not the best, offensive play calling head coaching candidates. I would be really interested in getting him in the building if I was Jacksonville, if I was New Orleans. If you miss out on Ben Johnson, shoot, even Chicago. We're going to talk about the Ben Johnson of it all here in just a second when we talk about that Lions game. But man, it's the way that the Bills have become what they were in 2020 and 2021 and in 2022, this like spread out offense where it's Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and they're throwing the ball over the yard. And like, make no mistake, if they had the right receiver personnel, I think that they could certainly still be that team. But the fact that now they play more, jumbo sets with like 6 offensive linemen and heavy personnel packages, and they just run you over, and they're this physical team that the wide receivers block like they do, just such an impressive transition. And like Sean McDermott, I want to shout him out for a really cool defensive game plan here. We talk about the Ravens having the ball, but the fact that I think that move to fire Ken Dorsey in the middle of last season was it was panned by a lot of people in like big media and stuff like that. It was sort of marked as like is this a desperation move? You fire Leslie Frazier, you fire Ken Dorsey. It ended up being the thing. I think like the Bills going away from that spread shotgun heavy approach and being this team, I really do think it makes them a better, more equipped operation to, look, they're going to go into Kansas City next weekend. Maybe they lose, whatever, but I think they're a better postseason team under this build than they were previously.
Yeah, and that's almost one of those like, old school meathead football fan things to say, but I think there's real truth in it, right? Like the Bills can beat you all kinds of ways, and they can certainly beat you on the ground, and they are a team that is equipped to travel into bad weather environments, hostile environments, and still do some things that they are really deeply comfortable with, and beat you in ways where they are, competent at a level that I don't know that they were competent in like 3, 4, 5 years ago. I think it's such a good point about Brady. Like, no shade toward Ben Johnson, who I think was great and I think called some really, really fun stuff in the loss against Washington. But I also think there are a couple of coordinators that really closed the gap on Ben Johnson in terms of the, head coach candidate hierarchy.
No question. Let's move to the Ravens here. And, I was thinking about you a lot, Andy, during these 2 games specifically, because a lot of what you've talked about on these postseason recap shows is the singular plays that can flip, and really end up defining a win or a loss. And I think the 2 teams that lost these banger games, the Ravens and the Lions, sometimes it is just as dumb and as simple as, hey, if you make mistakes against a really good team with a really clean quarterback on the other side and you turn the ball over or you drop passes in critical moments, guess what? Like, you're going to lose the football game. And that is what happened certainly to the Ravens and the Lions. But beyond just some of the turnovers and mistakes, which we will talk about, I did want to shout out Sean McDermott for a great, I thought, really cool defensive game plan. This is typically not a big, they're not like one of the crazier blitz teams in the league. They don't play a lot of man coverage, but they played a lot of man coverage in the early portions of this game, which I think made a big difference. And also they blitzed on 15 of 31 Lamar Jackson dropbacks. That's 48.4% according to Next Gen Stats. That's their 5th highest blitz rate in a game under Sean McDermott and highest in a game since week 15 of the 2021 season. So I think the Ravens were a little flummoxed early on offense, but certainly in the second half, the dam started to break. Lamar had some great plays. Derrick Henry started getting it cooking on the ground, but ultimately it wasn't enough because of some of those mistakes.
Pretty bold approach against the best running quarterback in the league too, right? We're gonna play a bunch of man, and we're gonna blitz, and we're gonna get you on the move. Pretty aggressive, and not something that would occur to you as perhaps the best possible approach, but if it throws off a team, that's a big deal. Yeah, to your point about just being able to play clean football, and so we saw that in every game, right? The team that avoided turnovers, the team that avoided the catastrophic mistakes, the teams that played the cleanest games, whether that was in terms of penalty or sacks taken, or again the turnover margin, those teams all came out winners. And it was just really, really difficult for Baltimore to overcome. They had an interception that I don't know exactly who to blame on the interception, right? Although Rashad Bateman's had an awesome year, and what does he have, a dozen touchdowns, including the postseason. He's also been the intended receiver on like 4 of Lamar Jackson's 5 interceptions this year. So they've had some hiccups along the way. I don't know who to put that interception on, but that was a tough play. And then obviously Lamar's fumble was a turning point in the game, and that was like the most Justin Fieldsy fumble that you're ever going to see from Lamar Jackson. Just did not need to happen. Trying to keep a play alive, seemingly was keeping a play alive in very typical Lamar fashion, and then puts it on the ground trying to change hands. That's just sloppy, and it was a huge swing in field position. It was just an absolutely huge moment of the game. The fact that they almost overcame all of that is wild too. Like the fact that this could have been a tie game with like a minute and a half to go is crazy.
Oh no, yeah, that's a big. It's what makes this so heartbreaking, I think, for Baltimore. This is the second straight postseason where I think they could enter the playoffs thinking we are the best and most well-rounded team, and the fact that it's an earlier exit than last year, it just goes to show, number one, like how difficult the AFC is right now with all of these great quarterbacks. Like somebody is coming away. It's usually not Patrick Mahomes, but somebody is coming away from the AFC playoff run disappointed at some point. And the Ravens are disappointed one round earlier than they were last season. I do think the Rashad Bateman interception, I think that like part of that was that like they're getting more man coverage than they thought. And I think there was maybe a miscommunication. Do you want to take that ball more inside if you're like that route more inside if you're Bateman, or do you want to push it to the corner, like on the sideline there? And I think that was sort of maybe that miscommunication there, because otherwise, like, I mean, Bateman's touchdown, I think that's been the best part of his game where he's taken a leap this year, is he's been so much better when Lamar gets off script, like finding the open areas and uncovering for him and being like a reliable target there, especially with Zay Flowers being out in the postseason. That has been critical, but they were not on the same page there. To me, I think that was more of just, I mean, Lamar flamed himself for turnovers after the game, and I get it, because especially that fumble, that's killer. He's prone to some just like, what are you doing? Fumbles every now and again, and that one comes at the worst time. But yeah, they were able to battle back, and I feel bad for Mark Andrews because he's a really good guy. I've gotten to speak with him a couple of times. He seems awesome, and he's battled back from a really tough injury that clearly was limiting him to start this year. But all-time bad game for Mark Andrews, man. I mean, the drop at one point, obviously the fumble, which was very Deontay Johnson-esque. Like, who do you think you're juking out on that play? That was almost more, obviously it's not worse than the fumble, because the fumble's bad. Like, you can't lose the ball there. But the fact that he was, I don't know, you're trying to juke across the entire field when you could have easily just run up field and like keep going. Like, what are we doing? That was almost more mystifying than the fumble itself, which then just felt like, yeah, that's what happens when you do that. And then, of course, dropping the 2-point conversion, which just felt like I have no investment in this game. I could have been totally happy if either of those teams went to the conference championship to take on the Chiefs, but that just felt like a total sink in that moment there for the game to end that way.
Yeah, I want to kind of separate those two plays, because I actually I thought it was also just an incredible like punch out and recovery by Bernard, right? Like that was a defensive player making a play. So I don't want to just hang that all on Mark Andrews as if it was, a series of F ups. I don't think it was like that. I thought it was a spectacular play, and a game changing play by a really good defensive player. And credit to him for that. I saw some people online being like, "Oh, Mark Andrews just has to get down." Nobody has the instinct to just go to the ground in that scenario. It's a good play by a defender, and they could have overcome it. The drop 2-point conversion is brutal. It was brutal to watch. You really feel for the player, because that was not a play where that wasn't, no defender made a play on that one. That was just he didn't pick up the ball. He didn't finish the play. That's just really rough to watch. And part of the reason that it's so rough is, man, we were headed for a classic ending, right?
Yeah.
Because the scenario was he scores there, and now we've got like Josh Allen getting the ball back with 90 seconds at a tie game. That's fun. That's the way that game deserved to end, right? Like, I mean, if you're a Buffalo fan, you'll obviously take it, but we were headed for Josh Allen getting the ball back with 90 seconds to play, and that was just going to be thrilling. Like, I don't know, Baltimore could have got it back again too. Like that game was gonna end in a really fun manner. We had a path to overtime, which would have been thrilling. Just felt right for those two teams to be facing each other, and it was a little bit of you feels like we were deprived of the classic ending that we should have had. But I also want to it should stick with people that there was a lot of game left if Mark Andrews catches that ball. So let's not put this 100% on Mark Andrews.
Oh, my first thought, honestly, when Likely caught the touchdown, was too much time on the clock. That was my first instinct, was too much time on the clock. And then obviously it just ends in that, like I said, a very sinking fashion. By the way, just side note again, I think Mark Andrews is great. But anybody who comes out of this game saying like, man, Mark Andrews usually very sure-handed, doesn't drop passes, doesn't watch a lot of Ravens football. Like, Mark Andrews is a great player, but he's very prone to some bad drops at bad times. And that was obviously the worst possible time for it to happen. Maybe could have been a slightly better throw, but still, you got to catch that if you're one of the best tight ends in the league, which Mark Andrews is. But let's spin it forward for the Ravens. Obviously, they're out of the playoff mix here. They do have some pretty critical free agents, mostly on the offensive line. Ronnie Stanley, after a revival year, is going to be a free agent. Patrick Bakari is a free agent. He bounced for them. He played mostly guard. He played almost 90% of the snaps this year. So those two guys are going to, I don't know if Ronnie Stanley's a franchise tag candidate at this point in his career, but I'll tell you what, if he does hit the open market, he's a left tackle. Some team is going to pay him out of the nose. Yeah. But besides those two guys, mostly everybody will be back. Zay Flowers, who missed a ton of time. I think Andrews, they'll maybe look at his contract. Maybe he needs to restructure. Maybe Isaiah Likely needs to kind of flip the tight end rotation there and take more work because he's been so impressive. I don't know. But by and large, the same cast of characters will be back for the Ravens offense next year. How do you kind of look at this offense, especially from like a fantasy perspective?
Yeah, this is a clear Super Bowl contender, right? Like, I mean, there was a reason that they were sitting atop, a lot of all the national media members who create power rankings throughout the year. Like, Baltimore was at or near the top of those power rankings all season, even when they didn't have the record that Buffalo did, that Kansas City did. I mean, they're a joy to watch, and the Super Bowl window for that team is pretty much every year Lamar Jackson is healthy. I think the receiving core is we learned this in the playoffs when Zay Flowers, not that we didn't know it already, but when Zay Flowers wasn't available, man, they're deep. They got some talent. Bateman was great this year.
Your guy Anthony Miller running routes in a 2-minute drill in the playoffs.
Right? Isaiah Likely's great, and I have no doubt that again, not certain what will happen with Mark Andrews. I assume that Lamar will want Mark Andrews back, and Mark Andrews will come back, and I don't seriously think that he's going to be gone. But if there were ever a scenario where Mark Andrews is no longer there, I think Isaiah Likely is immediately a top 3 fantasy tight end, like 3. I think he's good. Like I think he's legit, very good, possibly great. Almost receiver type skills. You can ask almost everything of him. He's capable of highlight catches that very few tight ends are capable of making. I think that guy has it in him to, I don't know, if we ever got like a disaster scenario with Andrews and he went down for a season, something like that. I mean, I think Isaiah Likely has like 1,200 yard potential. I think he's outstanding.
Yeah, I think that's a great call about him as maybe that type of tight end. I agree with you. I think he could be that guy. He could be like before, I don't know if people can still trade in Dynasty right now. If there's no deadlines, like I would try to get him before if there is a Mark Andrews like news bite coming from the offseason, which I tend to agree with you. I don't think Lamar would want him to leave. They've had a great connection their entire careers, but yeah, likely at some point I do think is going to be like the type of guy that will just get insanely expensive from a Dynasty trade perspective. You mentioned that wide receiver depth. It is worth noting Nelson Aguilar, free agent. Tylan Wallace, who popped up for a big play here and has popped up for some big plays, he's a free agent. Steven Sims, Deontay Hardy, like their entire wide receiver, the great Anthony Miller, who I just mentioned, elevated from the practice squad. Like basically everybody except even Deontay Johnson, who's like not even really on the team, but is technically going to be a Raven after the Super. The whole weird like compensatory thing that they're trying to do there. He's a free agent and obviously will never play for this team again. Like Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, I think those guys are entrenched in the 1 and 2 spot, but they will likely need to add some bodies at the wide receiver room, which is maybe the only big change coming from a personnel standpoint. Let's move to the other banger game that we got in the divisional round, which is Commanders 45, Lions 31. And I mean, my God, Andy, we could talk about this game. We could probably talk about this game for 3 hours. It was so fun. So many different things to pull on from the actual game, big picture things for both teams. But let's start with the Commanders in such an impressive win. And so far through the postseason, Andy, 0 turnovers, 1 sack, 1 punt for the Commanders this postseason, which is just unbelievable stuff.
That was actually what I was going to focus on. We obviously get every game yields, 4 or 5 thrilling highlight plays from Jaden Daniels. He's been awesome. Can't say enough good stuff about him. But man, these guys are playing such clean games. It's crazy. It's fun that they're as aggressive as they are when we get to fourth down scenarios. It's always 4th and 1, 4th and 2. Like they never, they never fall behind. They never fall off schedule. They don't I think they have 9 penalties in the postseason so far, but I can't think of, I don't know. I can't even think of one that has been seriously impactful and has disrupted, a scoring scenario or a huge drive. They don't commit, impactful penalties. Daniels himself is not taking sacks. It's a very difficult guy to get down behind the line of scrimmage. They have, Kingsbury is one of those guys who has really closed the gap on Ben Johnson at no fault of Ben Johnson. It's just been really impressive. They have easy answers to pressure, and they find those answers. And man, they're just so mistake free. Mm-hmm. It's wild. For somebody who, again, watch a lot of Bears football, I've always got the Bears game on in the background. My wife commented during this game, and she's, my wife is always multitasking while watching football, but we had this one on, and she picks her head up, and we get that great screen to McLaurin that McLaurin pops for the touchdown. Amazing play. And she was like, why can't more Bears plays look like that? And there's, I think I mentioned it last week. There's just no, we never get a pre-snap penalty that disrupts a drive from the Commanders. They play such clean football. They're operating at such a high level on top of when you get a cast of characters that includes McLaurin and Jaden Daniels, there's always the possibility of something spectacular, but man, they just never make mistakes that disrupt drives. And that is just super impressive. I don't know, if you watch a lot of regular season football and you see how so many teams get in their own way so often and how easy that is to do when you've got a rookie quarterback, it just simply doesn't happen to the Commanders. And that to me is the most impressive thing about them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And Kingsbury, man. And look, I wrote a Terry McLaurin kind of appreciation article last week heading into this game, and why he had this season that he had. And in taking a sort of victory lap on finally Terry McLaurin had the season that I could always envisioned him having, I talked about why I missed it this year. I didn't think this was going to be the season because, one, usually we don't see this stuff happen with rookie quarterbacks. 2, Terry McLaurin, is a little bit I was kind of concerned. Are we, he's 29 years old. Have we missed the prime years of Terry McLaurin? And the third thing was that I was really skeptical about Cliff Kingsbury, and obviously wrong. As I wrote in the article, all 3 of those things were incorrect. Jaden Daniels is special. Terry McLaurin's still in his prime, and Kingsbury has really, I think, showered himself in glory this postseason, especially in this game, because the Lions blitzed Jaden Daniels on 54% of his dropbacks, which Aaron Glenn's been great all year, but at some point I probably would have abandoned that plan because of just how much they were cooking the blitz. 12 of 16 for 191 yards and a touchdown, according to Next Gen Stats. He was just, you're right, answers every single time. If they'd blitzed where they had these 3 guys on that side of the field, every single time they had one player there that was easily available for Jaden Daniels, who, again, we'll talk about Jaden Daniels and everything in just a second. But I also like your point about how mistake-free the Commanders are. And to me, it's a really difficult balance when you're a young team like Washington and a rebuilding team. New general manager, new head coach, new offensive coordinator, and obviously they were going to take a rookie quarterback no matter what. It's always a tough balance when you're what do you do in that situation with other young players? Because you can really end up on the side of hey, you've got a lot of veteran players that end up being progress blockers and you don't find out what your young players are. But man, I don't think the Commanders are in this situation without the culture of competitiveness that feels very Seattle-esque. And obviously Dan Quinn, that's where he originally comes from, is under that Pete Carroll tree. Like, they just got guys out there that know what they're doing and have like raised the standard of the team. So that at some point when these guys like Bobby Wagner, I mean, dude, the Commanders have to lead the league in snaps played by this guy's still playing. Like, right? I mean, Wagner, Ertz. I mean, like there's a lot of players like that on this team.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Jamison Crowder,
dude.
Like,
yeah, Jamison Crowder.
Every time I hear his name, it gets me. I'm like, oh man, that's right. Jamison Crowder's still in the league. Who'd have thunk it?
His second stint with Washington, they have a new damn team name from when he was drafted. Like there's a lot of guys, even Eckler, who obviously is a younger player, but where he's at as a running back, he's so critical to what they're doing. And we know, like, if you listen to the show, you know he's definitely a big culture guy, things like that. When those guys eventually age out, and they will, I think the standard of the whole operation has been raised, because that to me they feel like a veteran team with a young phenom rookie quarterback, which I think is a great balance, and it's the reason that they're going to the damn NFC Championship game. Like, that was the point I made to a bunch of my friends who were watching this game with me, and they're all Cowboys fans, by the way, and they were totally thrilled with, by the second quarter, I was like, oh yeah, you're getting a Commanders Eagles NFC Championship game, so get ready for that. They were thrilled with that, especially because there's two former Cowboys coaches on these staffs. That's great stuff. Anyways, besides that, I was like, they just have so many veteran players, and I think that is why they are mistake-free and play as hard as they do.
And, you know, some of the, obviously Bobby Wagner's playing great. Zach Ertz playing this well at this stage of his career, this deep into the season is really surprising to me, but he's been spectacular. It's not like Austin Eckler isn't getting crazy volume, but, you know, since coming back from injury, he's looked awesome. And he's had a couple of moments in every game where, you know, they're like field flipping plays, or he gets 5 yards more than you'd think any back would get. Probably gets 5 yards more than Brian Robinson would get in the same situation. Like, I think Eckler looks like the best guy in that backfield right now,
especially in the pass game. I mean, some of the mismatches that they were able to get, and I took the over on his receiving yards before kickoff when it was clear like he was going to play a big role and things like that, because you just think about the man coverage the way the Lions play, like he was a mismatch several times in the pass game for them.
Yeah, we've also we've been talking about Washington all year, maybe not having that second option in the receiving core that really scares you. But De'Ami Brown's been great for 2 weeks now, and of course the big game, the big gain against Detroit was just a beautiful ball from Jaden Daniels. They only, like, kind of classic Cliff. We can talk about this a little bit. It wasn't part of the failure on Detroit's side is that I didn't think this was like a radical departure for Cliff Kingsbury. This was a lot of the, in broad brushstrokes, this was a pretty classic Cliff Kingsbury game. A lot of stuff within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, 2 or 3 deep shots that, could make all the difference, and they hit them. It's a beautiful ball from Daniels to De'Ami Brown that De'Ami couldn't possibly drop. But De'Ami's played great. They've had an actual answer as a supporting receiver alongside Terry McLaurin, which they haven't necessarily had all year. That was great to see. But yeah, like, again, Kingsbury, a lot of screen game, run heavy. This wasn't like a radical departure from what we might have expected Washington to do. So I am surprised that they so consistently caught Detroit just wrong-footed and seemingly ill-prepared on almost every play.
Well, something Scott and I talked about in the preview show, and why I said that the Commanders were definitely live in this game is, one, just because Jaden Daniels is so unflappable, but there were a lot of matchup advantages that if the Lions were going to lean into what they do, that the Commanders had those matchup advantages unless they were able to bring Jaden Daniels to the ground. Because against man coverage, he's been one of the best statistical passers all year, but he's also been one of the highest pressure to sack ratios. But that has died off over the course of the season. And really in this game, obviously 0 sacks, that was a big part of it. So yeah, I know the Lions defense is banged up, totally understand. But man, they're not like all of their starters, are not on IR. Like that 18 players on IR on there's a lot of role players there too. I know they have critical injuries and things like that. But anyways, it was a great game plan. It was a great game plan by Cliff Kingsbury that leaned into what they're very good at And I think he just deserves a lot of credit. And man, if I'm Cliff Kingsbury, I'm going to try to get on the Ben Johnson path. I'm not taking any of these head coaching jobs right now, especially because you're still getting paid by the Arizona Cardinals to be a head coach.
Right.
I'm going to wait this thing out. And he's like, he's done some, not media availability, but like pressers and things like that, where he's talked about, I really like working with Jaden Daniels and I really like working under Dan Quinn. If I'm Cliff Kingsbury, I'm trying to stick in that job and continue to lean into everything that you're doing right now. But before we get to the Lions side of this, I just have to ask you, Andy, because you're older than me, obviously, and smarter. You've seen more football than I have. Is Jaden Daniels the best rookie quarterback? Like, is this the best rookie quarterback season that we've ever seen? And I like, besides, Andrew Luck and like all these guys who've had great rookie quarterback seasons, from an accomplishment perspective and where this guy is right now and what he's doing, I think it's going to be really hard to argue against. Couple stats here to back this up. This one from @Dante Kopflem. He's an NFL researcher. Rookie quarterbacks to start a conference championship. Brock Purdy, #1 scoring defense in the NFL. Mark Sanchez, Jets, #1 scoring defense in the NFL. Joe Flacco for the Ravens, #3 scoring defense in the NFL that season. Ben Roethlisberger for the Steelers, #1 scoring defense in the NFL that season. Sean King for the Buccaneers, #3 scoring defense in the NFL that season. Jaden Daniels for the Commanders, 18th. This defense is playing really well right now. They're forcing turnovers. They do not deserve to just be discussed as some also ran. But I mean, even if you want to talk about offensive personnel and like compare Brock Purdy to what Jaden Daniels has got going on, that's a whole other thing. Hayden Winks from Underdog also posted this. Most total yards by rookies in playoff wins. #1, Jaden Daniels, 564 and counting. It goes down the list. Brock Purdy, 546. Joe Flacco, 296. Mark Sanchez, 282. CJ Stroud, 274. Russell Wilson, 187. Ben Roethlisberger, 181. Man, I mean, Jaden Daniels is the offense. He's the system, as I've said many times before.
Yeah, we can't, one thing that people have to realize is it wasn't really until it's probably Cam Newton. Like, it's very recent that we expected anything at all from rookie quarterbacks, right? Right? Like, I mean, I think people generally know that when Peyton Manning came into the league, right, it was 28 interceptions. I think in his first 4 games, he threw like 11 interceptions. He was taking all kinds of sacks, right? Like for most of the history of the game, a rookie quarterback getting starts in their first season, especially if they're getting starts in like September and October, it just never went well. We never expected big things. Cam Newton like flipped a switch for us, and he was really just an absolute revelation. And we just hadn't seen a lot of great rookie seasons prior to that. Dan Marino was certainly really impressive as a rookie. That was forever ago. Yeah. That was, multiple eras ago. It just didn't happen. So we're really only talking about, I don't know, 14, 15 years in which we expect anything at all out of rookie quarterbacks. And I
most,
think in
by
all
the
that
way,
time,
Andy, most rookies are still bad, like, or their teams are not successful. Like that great Cam Newton season, they were 6-10 that year.
Right. And actually, Cam's best games were probably like the first 2 games, right? That's where all the passing stats were. And then it was a really impressive rushing season that we hadn't seen before. But it was, you could see flaws. There's just not a lot of flaws here. And in terms of, again, the thing that I keep coming back to with Washington is they are just so mistake-free. And your quarterback is the biggest part of that. And that's really but even still, when I judge rookie quarterbacks, I'm generally just looking for, when things go right, what do the best plays look like? And do I really have like some traits here that I can kind of hang my hat on and things that I can feel good about? With Jaden Daniels, there are no bad moments quite often. Like, I don't know, he just played a perfectly clean game against the best damn team in the NFC, and outclassed Jared Goff along the way. And like, I don't know, this is something we don't get. We don't get rookie quarterbacks who just come in and they have, he's joking in the fourth. He's got jokes in the fourth quarter of a game that is going to send him to the conference championship game. I mean, he's calm. Certainly, we haven't seen a moment yet that is too big for Jaden Daniels, and the extent to which he is not flummoxed is just we don't get a lot of that. Now, we also don't get a lot of rookie quarterbacks who've already played 5 collegiate seasons, and he's a little bit older, and all that shows up too. But I think this is probably with where it's come so far. The fact that he's already gotten to a conference title game and he's done it this is largely about him. This is largely about him and how clean the team is playing. This is probably in totality, this is probably the most impressive rookie quarterbacking season that we've seen.
Let's talk about the Lions here. The story for this game for them is mostly turnovers, self-inflicted wounds. Obviously, I think Jared Goff maybe was trying to bite off a little more than he could chew on a few of those interceptions, especially against two high safeties and things like that. Shout out to Mikey Sanderstill, who I thought might get taken apart by Jameson Williams in this particular game just because of the speed difference. Obviously, Williams had the long run, but that interception was super impressive by him. But yeah, to me, it was just obviously interceptions and turnovers in this game were a huge issue for the Detroit Lions, particularly the Jameson Williams pass, that interception, which, by the way, like, Andy, I think you're the one who talks about it a lot. Like, it's just so great when, like, Ricky Pearsall, right, when he had that one late in the like a wide receiver pass option and he just threw it away. Like, you never see a receiver do that. If I was to line up all the receivers in the NFL that were like most to least likely to throw it away, Jameson Williams would be number one in terms of least likely to throw that damn thing away. So I think that's a bit of a rough call in that moment. Probably not what I would have done, but Ben Johnson knows more about football than me.
Yeah, he was also on an absolute heater, and he had some incredible calls in this game that did work spectacularly, right? And they were it's shocking that they managed to get to 31 points while turning the ball over 5 times. They were also in a mode where, like, they needed to score. And if you thought you had a play in your bag that could get you a touchdown, like on that play, from distance, let's go for it. But yeah, like, if you give any receiver or running back the option to throw, and they don't take it, like, if they just, if he would have just run that ball and taken a short loss, obviously it's better than the result. You should get an immediate contract extension as a receiver who actually throws the ball away when you're given the opportunity to throw and it's covered, and it was clearly covered. Like, it was well covered. That would have taken like a higher level throw to complete that thing, even though it's Gibbs downfield, whatever. Like, you had to either eat that ball or throw it away. And it's just, again, you give somebody who doesn't have an opportunity to throw the ball the rare opportunity to throw it, they almost always pull the trigger. And yeah, it happened there. That was bad. But you just, you're not going to beat a lot of, I'm going to break some news here, but you're not going to beat a lot of good teams giving up 45 points and turning the ball over 5 times, right? Like, the turnovers were the whole ball game here. It was crazy. If you think of, and I know my framing for a lot of these playoff games is like, what is the one big swing play in this thing? In this one, it's got to be that strip sack by Washington, deep in their own territory, right? Because Detroit's driving. We're headed for 14-3. Like, it's gonna be a 14-3 Detroit lead. I think they're just on the door of the red zone or inside the red zone, right? And then you get the strip sack and the recovery, and Washington follows it with just one of their like methodical, flawless 11 play drives that ends in a touchdown. And now we have a completely new game. But if that thing is actually 14-3, and now the Lions are rolling, and we don't have the early turnover to blunt the momentum, things can get messy in a hurry for teams facing Detroit, because Detroit is just, they're so relentless. And that play to me just felt like the one that flipped the entire game.
Yeah, obviously Dorrance Armstrong, 2 sacks. And another former Cowboys pass rusher, Dante Fowler, who made some plays in the backfield in this one. He's another one of those guys like, what? Like, this dude is still playing? Like, he's drafted. He was not a very good draft pick in 2015 when the Jaguars took him. He's had a long career as a role player and actually just shown up for some critical playoff teams. But yeah, he's another one of these guys like, what? Like, this guy's still take a big time steps. Anyways, on the Lions, obviously, neither of these coordinators I think are coming off their best games, but they're probably both they're likely to lose one of these guys. Adam Schefter of ESPN has been adamant that they're losing both of them, to the point that this morning he posted candidates expected to receive consideration to replace Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson and defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn includes Lions assistant head coach / running backs coach Scotty Montgomery, Lions pass game coordinator Tanner Engstrand, and Lions linebacker coach Kelvin Shepard. I remember Kelvin Shepard playing. Anyways, a lot of former players on that staff. Antoine Randall-L's there having a talk to Jameson Williams.
Yeah.
Don't be throwing that pass. Hank Fraley has their offensive line coaches received offensive coordinator interviews elsewhere. This is what stinks about this Lions season, Andy. And I think what we need to talk about, especially like if Ben Johnson is not calling plays here anymore, how much has this changed the picture and the ecosystem for this team? I said ecosystem, because it's just this nothing stings more for NFL franchises than falling short of success, like the goals of what you headed to this year. And like Dan Campbell says it's going to be tough to get back to the NFC Championship game last year. They're not making it back this year, but now they're going to have to pay the cost of success despite falling short with both these coordinators. And again, at least one of them likely out of here this year.
I'm certainly, if I'm a Lions fan, I'm more panicked about Ben Johnson. And this is unfair, and I'm sure this is recency bias and all this, but you're like, we're talking about a defensive coordinator whose team just allowed 45 points and like never ever got a stop. And I find Aaron Glenn to be charming, and everything we've seen on the sideline from Aaron Glenn is really, really fun, and full credit for great game plan against the Vikings. He's had some great moments. But if the note that he goes out on is we gave up 45 points and absolutely could not stop Washington a single time, you're probably not hating that move. If you're a Lions fan, you're probably ready. But Ben Johnson is a real problem, because maybe this wasn't Ben Johnson's best game, but he still gave us, that crazy toss to Montgomery into a shovel pass to St. Brown. That was ridiculous. Haven't seen that. That was cool. Like the play design in this one was still really spectacular. He was, every game he's in his bag. I thought he was tremendous here. I didn't even, whatever. I have a high tolerance for wild ass plays, so I didn't even totally hate the concept behind the Jameson Williams play. He just needed to throw it away, and somebody needed to get in his ear about throwing it away. Like I think Ben Johnson's just had a fantastic season, and this is obviously the plum. I mean, there's not another coordinator job in the NFL that is as attractive as the Lions offensive coordinator role, because you've got young Jahmyr Gibbs at your disposal. You've got St. Brown there. You've got a totally competent quarterback. Yeah, I mean, this is a great environment under a wonderful head coach who is going to give you some latitude and is super aggressive himself. So, like, everything about it is good. The line is good. Everything is great. So this job is going to be a springboard to head coaching opportunities. So I think it is the most attractive landing spot for a coach on the way up, and they should be able to, they should have their choice of young coordinators and young assistants. So that's the one that I'd be most nervous about, because Ben Johnson, on top of being, competent in all the right ways, man, he's thrown in some wrinkles that have been really, really fun.
I'll say two things on this. Number one, the head coach on the other side of the field in Dan Quinn is a great reminder that your last game as a coordinator doesn't define you, right? Because Dan Quinn's defense was shredded by Jordan Love and the Packers in last year's playoffs. And obviously we see what he's doing with the Washington Commanders. So neither guy here, Glenn or Johnson, can be defined by this game alone. Secondly, on the Ben Johnson part, I mean, if he ends up going, it's just the Eagles are a great reminder that sometimes it's a great setup, right? Cool. And just elevate the next guy. It doesn't always work like that, right? Because that's obviously what happened to last year's Eagles. Shane Steichen leaves. We'll just keep the same system going. Brian Johnson doesn't know how to push the buttons at the right time. But I think to Dan Campbell's credit, he's done a great job in identifying and developing coaches, Ben Johnson included, who wasn't the original offensive coordinator under Dan Campbell. They fire Anthony Lynn, who ironically is coaching for the Commanders now, and they just keep that, like, they put Ben Johnson in that role and keep empowering him and everything like that. So hopefully there's another guy like that on the staff, because, man, I'm definitely trying to draft some Lions next year. Like, if there's any sort of David Montgomery's still there, Ben Johnson's gone, discount on Jahmyr Gibbs, I'll be taking it, because that guy is just like so good. Should only continue to get better. This is an ecosystem that should continue to rock and roll.
Can I give you one other note on this game that is a very, very small point, but also probably my least popular opinion. I loved, everybody hated it. absolutely everybody hated the Cliff Kingsbury call on the 4th and 1 where they motion Marcus Mariota behind center, and he's pretty clearly gonna pitch it back to Jaden Daniels, but it gets blown up. I loved that call so much. The whole internet hated it. The whole internet was like, and I get it. The whole internet is like, way too cute. What? Just give it to your damn running quarterback and let him pick up the yard, right? Like, man, I love play calls in 4th and 1, 3rd and 1, where somebody calls a shot play, and they've rolled out like 2 quarterbacks on the field a few times and haven't done anything terribly interesting off of it other than sneak Marcus Mariota. And I just thought that was such a fun wrinkle. It got blown up. Yeah. It didn't work, but man, that was really fun play design to me.
Maybe I don't agree with you necessarily. Like that might have been a little
Nobody agrees with this. Yeah, I know.
But I will say it was rewarding to finally have something weird happen when Mariota gets on the field with Daniels. Because there has been a couple times and it's just, what? Like, what's going to happen? And then, Mariota just sneaks it or nothing happens. They try to draw him off sides, whatever. And for that to finally turn into something bizarre was at least mildly interesting. I'll put it that way, even if I don't necessarily agree with your point overall. But all right, let's take our first break. When we come back, we will talk through the other 2 games of the divisional round right after this.
Introducing Daily Draw, the latest free-to-play game from Yahoo Sports. Daily Draw gives you a pack of 6 prediction cards every day based on the day's biggest sporting event. Download or update the Yahoo Sports app on the Apple App Store or Google Play and join the action with Daily Draw today.
All right, we're back, Andy. I didn't put this one in the bangers column because I'm trying to, sort of podcast outline, which great job by me. The first segment was 50 freaking minutes long or whatever. So, A+. Continue to show why I'm very, very good at this job. Please note the sarcasm, everybody that's listening. But this game was also kind of a banger here, even if it didn't make the bangers category. Yeah. Eagles 28, Rams 22. Let's talk about the Eagles here in this one, Andy, who at one point I felt like, all right, this is wrapped up. Totally good. Eagles don't have anything to worry about. Ended up being a close game in the end, but signature performances from Saquon in this one. What caught your eyes from the Eagles win here?
Yeah, I guess first of all, it was this one more than anything was genuinely like 2 different games, right? It was first quarter. We've got a shootout on our hands. This thing is going to end just like, Washington, Detroit. This is going to be a crazy number. And then it was just like an Arctic survival scenario after the snow started falling. And it was clearly going to come down to, which team was able to control the mistakes. Both sides were going to have some drop passes. The conditions were super sloppy. But it was going to, there were going to be some disaster scenarios in play on one side or the other. And that team was going to lose the game. And honestly, like, credit to the Rams for making it competitive after, the 2 fumbles were just felt like everything. And you mentioned it felt like Philadelphia was gonna roll, especially after that, that final Barkley touchdown, and credit to the Rams for being able to come back. But like Jalen Carter, game wrecker, Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, like forcing those fumbles on, I think back-to-back possessions, right? Just absolutely critical. They gave Philly short fields. They blunted any momentum that the Rams might have. And again, that was, when we were playing on Hoth, that's when those plays happened. It was crazy conditions. That was really impressive. Obviously, Saquon Barkley was great. The dominance in run blocking of the Philly O-line can't be overstated. Like, it's just so... The idea that Saquon is now getting just a free run at the line of scrimmage and usually past the line of scrimmage on every carry is just so unfair. Because he's an athlete, unlike most other players at the position. He's still got the long speed. I mean, it's really hard to avoid. We talked all year about how Philadelphia seems weirdly dependent on these big plays, but they're just going to keep getting big plays if Saquon Barkley gets a free run at the line of scrimmage every time. It's going to continue to happen. He was great. The line was great. Philadelphia is really fun to watch. The cloud that hangs over this game, obviously, if you're an Eagles fan, is the knee issue with Jalen Hurts, which is pretty clearly significant. Jory Epstein had video of Hurts kind of shuffling gingerly in almost a grandfatherly manner after the game inside the stadium. So, Melissa Stark asked him post game, if he was feeling okay, and all Hurts said was, "I finished the game." So that's alarming. So that's that's your story going forward. And that is a major worry. But man, Philadelphia was generally very impressive, and I tip of the hat to LA for keeping it close. That was because I'm with you. I thought after we got that long Barkley touchdown, this is a wrap, and then it wasn't a wrap.
Yeah, I mean, your point about Saquon is really good, because if you remember, the one sort of like nitpick about Saquon when he came out was that he was like a home run hitter and not the like rhythm running back, right? Where he was going to consistently find holes and get you like 4 to 5 yards. He was more of like a 1 to 2 yard hit the home run. Well, there's never been a better place to just keep smashing home runs like he hits a damn batting cage than this Eagles offense. I mean, Mekhi Becton, as if the New York teams needed any more like pain and misery. Like Saquon is not the only former New York first round pick that's having I don't know if we can call his a revival season, but like a career year for the Eagles offense, because Mekhi Becton is having a revival season as the right guard for them, just blasting open holes in this game. The one play where they pulled Jordan Mailata around and he's like looking for somebody to block downfield and nobody's there. I mean, this is such a great rushing ecosystem, and Saquon is able to hit these. I said ecosystem again. God, I gotta get new words. 2025 goals, get new words. He's just able to just take off and he consistently hit these big plays. 205 yards on the ground here, 7.9 yards per carry. Super impressive, especially against a young, ferocious defense. 40% pressure rate did the Eagles have on Matthew Stafford. I agree with you. Like, Jalen Carter, I said this on Football 301, he's going to win a Defensive Player of the Year award at some point. It's hard for the defensive tackles to win it unless you're Aaron Donald, but man, he can absolutely take over a game. And the fact that they let him get some unblocked plays late in this one too, 5 sacks on Stafford. Stafford was definitely feeling it. We'll talk on the Rams side a little bit. But yeah, I mean, Jalen Hurts in just the pass game overall, he was pressured on 43% of his dropbacks. Obviously, there's the injury. A.J. Brown didn't have his best game here. He actually had a couple of drops in this one. Obviously, there was the one like shot play that he let slip that looked like it was going to be a big play for him. But that's kind of the one concern you have about the Eagles right now, is just the health of Hurts and like where this passing game is overall. But man, so when the Eagles can play their script on defense and in the running game, they're a really, really hard team to beat.
Yeah, really hard team to beat. And I certainly, again, I'm an impartial observer at this point. I don't have a real rooting interest in any team here. I really want to see Jalen Hurts as healthy as possible against this, healthy and fully operational Washington team as well. Like that, this is going to be a really, really fun NFC Championship game. And can't say enough good things about the way the Philadelphia offensive line is playing. The defense it's funny. People were handful of friends were trying to needle me during the Washington game about Jaden Daniels versus Caleb Williams, whatever. I could end up being wrong about this, but the draft pick that sticks with me and is forever going to stick with me is the Bears not taking Jalen Carter.
Yeah, totally.
like that, I get it. Good joke with Jaden Daniels, and Jaden Daniels has been awesome. He obviously had a better rookie season than Caleb, but I don't feel bad about the Bears quarterback situation. But my God, the fact that so many teams passed on Jalen Carter and that my team passed on Jalen Carter, and he's such a damn game wrecker, is really, really difficult to watch.
Well, don't worry, you're not going to be alone there. At least if you look back at the actual draft listing, he went the pick ahead of Chicago. We all know what happened there, but maybe a few people will forget the fact that the Bears traded down from that selection there. So like I said, you might get off the hook there. But listen, the damn Raiders took Tyree Jackson 7th overall when they could have just taken Jalen Carter, right? So you're not alone in terms of teams that pass on Jalen Carter, who, like I said, is just a complete game wrecker overall. That he's such an impressive player. Let's talk about the Rams, who Jalen Carter messed up a few times over there. Per Next Gen Stats, Stafford threw just 29.5% of his passes to open receivers, his second lowest in a game this year. I think they define open as 3+ yards of separation whole different conversation as to, whether that is that or the other. But he was able to complete 15 of 31 passes to receivers with less than 3 yards of separation, 260 and a touchdown, third most yards by any quarterback in a game in such situations this year. Great Stafford game overall. Stafford obviously talked after the game like he's going to take time to mull his future, which obviously if this team doesn't have Stafford, they're in trouble because Stafford is still great. But otherwise, Andy, this is a team that's, when we talk about like post-mortem for postseason losers here, this team is very young on both sides of the ball. They've had 2 consecutive very successful drafts in 2023 and 2024. I think both this is a team that's set up to be on the rise. Obviously, they have to figure out the Cooper Kupp stuff. They have to, I think, get more explosive on offense overall so that Stafford doesn't have to throw to a bunch of covered receivers. Like they're a team that I think is set up to add some offensive personnel, which will be very interesting if Stafford is back on this team.
Yeah, and if we do add like just one element to the receiving, like this is a team that got like Tyler Higbee back and immediately was like, oh, let's build the whole offense around Tyler Higbee. Yeah. Like that's how starved they are for somebody alongside Puka Nacua. Like Higbee has become immediately just a target magnet, but they've got not only Kyron Williams in the backfield, but a pretty good back behind him. The young defensive front, like especially, after you lose Aaron Donald, you could just be like in the wilderness for years. And all of a sudden, I mean, Jared Verse had talked himself into a situation in which he really had to perform against Philly. And he was awesome. 3 tackles for loss. He was great. They have some real answers on the defensive front, and they're going to be there for a while. So it's a team that is well positioned. Obviously an older quarterback, but it's also an older quarterback. I don't know to what extent this stuff matters to Matthew Stafford, but he is really close to some career milestones that are just absolute automatic Hall of Fame. Like there's he's like a year or 2 away from just putting that question to bed, and he's going to have to be enshrined in Canton. So I hope he keeps going because he still makes 2 or 3 throws each week that are just miraculous throws that maybe only 3 or 4 guys can make.
Oh yeah. In an era where like I've talked this year a lot about these offenses run by veteran quarterbacks who've seen everything. And, you think about Detroit, you think about obviously Tampa Bay with Baker Mayfield and like, okay, these veteran quarterbacks and Kirk Cousins before he completely fell apart. They have the catalog of like, I've seen everything, right? I know what this coverage is, this, that, and the other, but he's also like Stafford is still a lunatic who is dripping with arm talent and can make all of these insane throws into tight windows. He's the perfect like quarterback for this era of football right now because he can diagnose everything and like knows where blitzes are coming and things like that. Other than just like he's not a Josh Allen type mobile freak show. But he has the arm to do all of it. Yeah, I hope he's back, and I hope there's some more talent around him on this team because the defense with even in this game, Braden Fisk gets both teams lost important rookies. Braden Fisk, Quinyon Mitchell on the other side didn't play for most of this one too. So those are injuries to watch, obviously, especially Mitchell as the Eagles move on. But yeah, the Rams are set up to go as long as they add a couple pieces, like I would just say like add another stupid thing I say too much, add some juice to this team on offense. We could really be cooking here next season for the Rams offense.
I'm glad you mentioned the Quinyon Mitchell injury, and it sounds like he's going to be okay for the NFC Championship game, which is great. There was we got a Matthew Stafford scramble in this game, which does not happen very often. I think the broadcast said it was like his 3rd or 4th of the entire season. Little 5-yard scramble, and that play had the potential to be like a huge game changer, right? Because not only does Stafford himself get banged up a little bit on that play, came up grimacing, he was a little rib thing. But the same play also knocked out Quinyon Mitchell, who suffers the shoulder injury on that play. And then his replacement, Isaiah Rodgers, who eventually made some plays in the game. Man, they were picking on him immediately and effectively. So that one like silly, stupid play that almost never happens had a real chance to be one of the most impactful plays in the entire postseason.
Yeah, they targeted Rodgers a lot. Darius Slay, per Next Gen Stats, was targeted 16 times in coverage, to the point that I think he said after the game, because him and Stafford are former teammates, like, yeah, I'm really happy for Matthew and all this stuff. He's like, but he could like leave me alone. Basically, is what he said after the game. Stop picking on me so much. So yeah, Eagles move on here. The Rams, I think they're a team that of any of these, like a lot of these teams, you know, Ravens, Lions, and even the next team that we'll talk about here, Houston, I think they probably leave this round of the playoffs with a bit of a bitter taste in your mouth. And look, you don't win the Super Bowl, it sucks, it's tough, but this is a very young team that I think is still on the rise, and I don't think has a ton of like really complicated things to consider in the offseason, unlike the next team that we're going to talk about here, unless Stafford retires. If Stafford retires, then we're in trouble. But as long as Stafford is back, I think this is a team that is can still feel really good about itself. Okay, let's move on to the final game of the weekend here. Chiefs 23, Texans 14. Chiefs, man. I mean, obviously, I don't know. Where do you want to take this one? Because this was an interesting game for them. Very Chiefs, very 2024 season Chiefs type of win here.
Yeah, you look at the box score and nothing really jumps out to you. Travis Kelce had most of the receiving yards on a pretty modest output from Patrick Mahomes, but this is a good example of a team playing pretty, this is like every other game we've talked about. The team that played the most mistake free ends up winning the thing. If I'm going to point out anybody's performance as a moderate surprise in this one, it would probably be Kareem Hunt. I thought he ran really well. In a game that just called for someone to, hit the holes that are available as hard as possible. Kareem Hunt stepped up. That's his game. And I thought he was awesome. Xavier Worthy, I believe, the only Kansas City wide receiver maybe to catch a pass. That's not great. That's got to change.
Yep. 0 for 1 for Hopkins and Smith-Schuster, and 0 for 2 for Hollywood Brown.
Yeah.
But to that point, Andy, if you look at just the way this team attacked Houston, Kamari Lassiter and Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter were targeted on just 3 plays out of Mahomes' 25 attempts. They just picked on the nickel corner and the linebackers, which obviously you can see in Travis Kelce, who has like a classic Travis Kelce postseason. Like, playoff time, Travis Kelce's playing again. 7 for 117 and a touchdown with a 49-yard catch in there for Travis Kelce.
Yeah, I also thought that they just, they dominate the fourth quarter. I thought it was a great Spags game, obviously. Defense certainly showed up. 7 consecutive AFC championship games is crazy. That's just crazy. And it's not, I saw some people discussing, the discussion around Washington after their game was like, oh man, they're going to rule the NFC for the next decade, whatever. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
No, they are not. No team is, right? Like, this doesn't happen. 7 consecutive title games is just wild. And nobody should hold out Kansas City as an expectation for any other franchise, right? Like, this is a crazy run they're on. And this is as unimpressive a Chiefs team as we have seen in the past decade. And they're still getting to the AFC title game. And they won 16 games, like just an absolutely crazy run that they're on. And it's one of the most impressive stats in football. Also, I know there are people talking about the officiating in this game. And I just watch some regular season games too, because the calls that you hated, the roughing calls that you hated, I mean, they're there for you every week in the NFL. It wasn't that unusual. And granted, the second one was a legit call, and I think the officials saw some things that weren't there. But it is also not evidence of a grand conspiracy to get Kansas City deeper into the postseason. That is simply not happening. I mean, that's like, we're talking about, if you seriously think that the NFL is trying to promote one of its smallest markets as deep into the postseason as possible, you are among Earth's most gullible people. Yeah,
listen, if they were rigging the games, the Cowboys and the Jets would be in the Super Bowl every year. Yeah. That's what would happen. The Cowboys and Jets would be rigged into the Super Bowl every single year, and the money would just flow and flow and flow. So that's not even a serious thing. I will say, it's definitely very frustrating when these things happen. And I'm glad that my guy, Troy Aikman, he gives voice to the frustration, not in a the damn Chiefs got another one or anything like that. But I'm glad that he's willing to sit in the booth, because I mean this is what's made Aikman so good this year, is that he just, or not necessarily just this year, but I think since he's gone to ESPN and since he's received effort money, is that he's got that effort vibe to him, where he's just like, yeah, he's willing to criticize officiating, willing to say, like Mahomes baiting some of these flags, I think is like, it's tough to watch. I don't, the amount of, and look, the Bills, we could definitely say it for them too. I don't get soccer out of my football. Okay. I don't need, get the NBA out of my football. I don't need all this flopping nonsense going around trying to get flags and things like that. Have a little self-respect. But regardless, the Chiefs can still leave this game obviously holding their head high. It was like a very mind-numbingly efficient offensive performance where Andy Reid just picks on a weakness on a great Houston defense, avoids where they're really strong on those outside corners. Thought that was a great game plan from him. And the 7 straight AFC Championship games. You don't get to 7 straight AFC Championship games because the refs rig calls, anything like that. You get it because you have one of the best quarterbacks that we've ever seen, and Andy Reid being there, and Andy Reid also being there to the point that nobody wants to hire his coordinators. They've never had to pay that price of success that we talked about with the Lions. Eric Bieniemy was the offensive coordinator for years. He has to make a lateral move to Washington and was terrible in the lateral move, by the way. And now it's like, who's rushing out? I know he's gotten some interviews, but nobody's rushing out to hire Matt Nagy for his second run here. And Spagnuolo, I guess, is just going to hang out forever as the Chiefs defensive coordinator and put up these great game plans, which leads me to the Texans side of things here. Stroud under pressure on 51.2% of his dropbacks and sacked 8 times. When he actually wasn't sacked, he was pretty good under pressure, 7 of 11 for 103 yards. But this game went what I kind of expected here for Houston. Trent McDuffie, per Next Gen Stats, shadowed Nico Collins on about 69% of his routes and was generally very effective. And a couple guys made some plays, but not enough. And the blocking issues are really a problem. I know that Houston, they've made 2 divisional rounds in a row since they drafted CJ Stroud. They're on the right path, but I still think, Andy, this team has to answer some pretty difficult questions in the offseason, which is we got to get some pass catchers here besides Nico Collins, because Diggs is a free agent and Tank Dell is definitely not starting the season, and who knows if he even plays. Plus, what happened on the offensive line this year? Why can't we pick up a stunt? Why can't we get an answer against the blitz? They have some tough questions to answer in the offseason.
Yeah, not like they didn't try to improve the offensive line entering this year as well. I'm glad you mentioned the receiving core, because it was my first note on this game. Is it would have been great to watch and everybody's banged up. Everybody's got injuries at this point in the season. Certainly, if somebody's a Lions fan and they're listening to this, they don't want to hear about anybody else's problems. But it would have been great to watch a version of this game that had a healthy Tank Dell and a healthy Steph Diggs. Because this is just a bunch of targets to Dalton Schultz and Hutchinson and Mechie and guys who just don't stress a defense in the same way as a trio like Nico Collins and Tank Dell and Steph Diggs would. And also it becomes is completely unfair, but we are deep in the postseason and we expect extraordinary things from players and teams. But it's almost like, man, Nico Collins has to play every snap. Played 56 of 68 and it didn't feel like enough, right? Because that's a dozen snaps in which there's absolutely no one on the field that is stressing the defense in any way. And it's totally unfair. But he might be one of the 5 best receivers in the game, and you'd hate to see him ever not on the field, because they don't have anybody like him with Dell injured and Diggs injured. That was just too bad. Also, on the Houston side, special teams was a disaster. Kicking game was a disaster. Giving up ton of yards on the opening kickoff was a huge problem. So you lost this thing in special teams, committed too many penalties, 8 sacks. There's a bunch of hidden yardage here that they gave up between return yardage and almost 60 yards, I think, lost to sacks, and 80 plus yards and penalties. That's just it's hidden yardage that you can't get back and you can't give to a team like the Chiefs.
And that's stuff they've been doing all season long. Penalties, sacks, things like that. That's why I think I don't want to say it's a tough offseason for Houston because they still have the right head coach, they have a pass rush, and they have the quarterback, and they have a number one receiver. They have a lot of ingredients to championship football teams, like the things you need to win a Super Bowl. They have, but they got it. Like the run game had a pretty good showing here in the postseason. The run game was mostly terrible this year. I don't think that's a Mixon problem. I think it's just we need to take a hard look in terms of the offensive environment that we've built here, and what needs to change. What do we need to do around CJ Stroud to make sure his third year doesn't feel as frustrating as his second year did? Because it definitely was a frustrating year for the Houston Texans. But again, by and large, I don't want to paint doom and gloom here for the Texans.
Not at all.
They have a lot of ingredients to a championship football team. So the right tweaks in the offseason, I think Houston could maybe be like, again, this sounds stupid because they made the divisional round, but like kind of a post-hype sleeper type team where the expectations were maybe too high in year two, but they might kind of be, depending on like Ben Johnson goes to the Jaguars or something like that, people like, ooh, Jaguars, maybe the new team in the AFC South or whatever. And the Texans just can actually take the leap in year three. I think that is very possible with the right few moves here.
You can also look at the Texans roster and like the things that are actually most difficult to find in the NFL. They got them right. Like there'll be whole drafts in which you can't find a great edge rusher or franchise quarterbacks or a true alpha wide receiver. Like they have all these things. They have they got corners. Like they have the most difficult things to find. So they got to fill in the other stuff, which is that is actually a pretty enviable position to be in.
All right, let's take our final break. When we come back, we'll do a little fun exercise here to end the divisional round right after this. All right, we're back. Final segment here. Producer Colin had this idea. So if Andy feels boxed into a corner, if anybody hates our answers, this is I'm doing the
Thank you.
I'm doing the Donovan McNabb. I'm doing the worst teammate thing. I'm throwing somebody else under the bus on this one. But I actually like the idea, and let's be honest, if I didn't like the idea by Colin, it wouldn't have made the show. We can there's a whole Andy, there's a whole graveyard of ideas from Colin that I didn't like that I've just nixed off the show. So
that's so true.
So in reality, I'm going to do the Lamar Jackson. I'm actually going to say, if this segment sucks, if Andy feels backed into a corner, or if people are pissed off by our answers, you blame me, okay? Don't be tweeting at producer Colin. You be tweeting at me, and I'm the quarterback of this show. I get all the blame when things go wrong. Okay, now I'm a good teammate. Good for me. All right, but what we're gonna do here, we're gonna rank the 4 potential Super Bowl matchups that we could see. And just like our dream Super Bowl matchup. And here's the thing, and this is why I like this segment. There's no rules. Andy, this is purely vibes, right? You can take this however you want it. Like most interesting game that we could possibly get. You could throw a team and a matchup at 4 that would just you grind your gears. You don't want to see it, whatever. This is totally an open-ended question. So we have 4 potential matchups, obviously, with the AFC and NFC championship game set. Bills versus Eagles, Bills versus Commanders, Chiefs versus Eagles, or Chiefs versus Commanders. Rank them 1 to 4. Your dream matchup is at number 1. The one you don't want to see is at number 4. I'm going to throw it to you first, Andy Behrens.
I just want to say as a little bit of a caveat that I have zero rooting interest in any team that remains in this thing. I'm kind of rooting for all of it. Every one of these matchups is a really exciting potential Super Bowl to me. There's no version of the Super Bowl ahead of us that I don't enjoy. I just want to throw that out there. Not hating anybody. I'm gonna be thrilled if our Super Bowl matchup is the game that I will now rank 4th among this group. And I think the one that I'm going to put 4th is let's call it Chiefs Eagles. I don't have a good reason to say that that's 4th. I think the Chiefs potentially winning a 3rd straight Super Bowl is one of the rarest things that we are ever going to see in sport, and I think it's really exciting. I think this game would certainly be like razor thin margin, very, very close. I don't have a bad thing to say about this potential matchup. I've just seen a lot of these two teams, and I think I know these two teams probably a little bit better than the other two. So I'll rank this fourth. Again, don't have a good reason for it. Do you want me to run through my whole list, or do you want to? Okay.
No, you know what? Let's do four. Like we'll do four. It's just so you don't have to sit here and take all the heat first, and I'm just sitting here like watching you struggle through this exercise, because it is difficult. But I'm also with you.
It's really tough.
My fourth one is also Chiefs Eagles, for no other reason than we just saw it a couple of years ago. So that let's get some new blood in here. That's going to be a big part of my list, is like, let's get some new blood and this, that, and the other. So for me, I agree with you. I think most people would probably say the one they want to see the least is Chiefs Eagles. Although, yeah, I'm with you. Like anybody, even the Chiefs, like seeing a three-peat would be cool. I know nobody's gonna want to hear that, but I'm cool with any of these matchups here. But to me, the least compelling is Chiefs Eagles.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I'm glad we agree, and I'm glad we can equally take heat there. And I just want to say that'd be a thrilling Super Bowl. Like if that's what we get,
probably would be a great game.
Freaking awesome. Yeah, it's absolutely awesome. I think my next one, man. See, now I'm like, I don't want to insult any fan base here. And I really truly don't. But I'm gonna put the Eagles in this one too, and I guess I'll just make it Bills Eagles. This has more to do with how exciting I would find the Washington Commanders being in the Super Bowl. I just think that would be absolutely thrilling, and like for a number of reasons, not just the quality of play that we've seen from Jaden Daniels and how flawless they've been, and you know, I guess if we're finding places where I have a rooting interest, I'd love to see Terry McLaurin and or Austin Eckler in a Super Bowl. So, but I don't have anything against the Eagles. It seems like I might, since I've put the Eagles in my third place game and my fourth place game. But any Super Bowl involving the Eagles is going to be absolutely thrilling. I guess we do have some open questions about the health of Jalen Hurts, and that is a concern as well.
I will just say definitely it's going to be I've already seen posts about, you know, putting Jalen Hurts' stat line and Josh Allen's stat line from this past game from disingenuous lunatics who obviously watched 0 seconds of the football game. One is a winner, one is this, that, and the other is a running back. Like, so at least at least you'd get that nauseating nonsense off your timeline if this game doesn't happen. Okay, my third one, and I'm going to say, you know, similar to Andy, I got nothing against the Chiefs, but my third is going to be Chiefs Eagles, or excuse me, Chiefs Commanders. I would love the Commanders in the Super Bowl. They're going to come up again, obviously on my list here, but I think if the Chiefs are in the Super Bowl again, you have to go into it with just, you know what, it'd be really cool to tell. I don't have kids. I'm not even sure I want kids, but it'd be really cool to tell my children that I watched the three-peat. You know, I watched a team win 3 games in a row. That's awesome, right? Like that's really the only thing that would be cool about the Chiefs in the Super Bowl again. Otherwise, like I said, my list, I want novelty. I want new things here. And so I'm going to put them third, this game third, simply for that reason. It is no reflection on the Commanders at all. It's simply just, I'd like to see some different teams at the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, I think we're headed for the same place here, because my number 2 is going to be Chiefs and Commanders. I don't find anything distasteful about the Chiefs, to be perfectly honest. I know that, like, it's wild that we've reached a point where they're like the villains, and I feel like most of America is rooting to not see the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. That's crazy. I haven't seen more than 3 other quarterbacks in my lifetime who can do some of the things that Patrick Mahomes can do. He's super inventive, just an absolutely thrilling player. I can't, like, you don't want to watch more of that? Okay. I'm
with you. By the way, I'm with you that it is wild that when I was growing up, you know, watching football, it's like, yeah, the Chiefs were just one of the teams, right? They weren't they didn't have villain energy, but I understand that. I understand why most NFL fans are sick of them and why they hate Mahomes and all that stuff. But yeah, I'm still very much I enjoy watching Patrick Mahomes. It's just, let's see some different stuff in the Super Bowl. He'll be back in the damn Super Bowl probably next year and the year after that. So let's get something different this year.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at. Obviously, the Commanders are now going to be the Commanders. I'm not a big Commanders guy. I don't remember a time in my life when I have actively rooted for the Washington football team, but seeing them, like, obviously my number 1 now is going to be Bills Commanders. But this Josh Allen season has been really, really fun. This Bills season has been really, really fun. They can win any number of ways. The Commanders, again, have been just a thrilling story. I'm also, I think the reason that I have the Commanders in, my number one and my number two potential matchups, I'm kind of rooting for the Dan Quinn redemption arc here, right? Like all the way back from 28-3, I think would be really, really fun. I think Dan Quinn has had you can't say enough. Like most of the hype around the Commanders has gone to Jaden Daniels, and deservedly so. But man, what a great season from Dan Quinn, and to be able to get a team with a rookie quarterback that is playing this mistake free against such quality opponents is just it's super impressive. This has been an awesome coaching job.
Couldn't agree more with that. Obviously, it's been an awesome coaching job. I will just say, number one, I'm very proud of you, Andy, because I think there's a lot of Bears fans out there that would just be outright miserable if the number 2 overall pick in the draft, where you took the number 1 overall pick quarterback, goes to the damn Super Bowl as a rookie. But you are so grounded and so mature. What a guy you are. But yeah, I mean, it would be great to see the Commanders. My number 2 Super Bowl matchup would be Bills versus Eagles, just because I think that would be, to me, it would be such a treat to see how do the Bills stop this run game and this offensive line. Can they do it again? Can they run on another really tough team? I think there's a lot of interesting matchups that would be at play there. I'd love to see how Sean McDermott defends Jalen Hurts. I think that would be a really fascinating one. And also my number 1 team also is the Bills. I'll just say, the quarterback I want to see. Like, I want to see one of these AFC guys beyond Mahomes raise a trophy at some point here. I don't want like Josh Allen. And look, these guys got a long way to go. Very much similar prime. But I don't want to see like Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow and all these guys. I don't want to see all 3 of them go Super Bowl less. So if we can get Allen and a Lombardi trophy this year, and I also love Josh Allen. He's one of my favorite players in the league. He has been for a long, long time. That would be sick. So Bills versus Commanders is my number 1 because, yeah, the Commanders in a damn Super Bowl is just is as somebody that has spent a lot of time with the Washington football team over his life growing up where I grew up. That's just insane. And 32 years since they've been in this spot. I am 33 years old. It's my entire life. I have just known misery and disgusting nonsense from the Dan Snyder Washington football franchise. And the fact that this is all a new era is beautiful to see. If it ends in a Super Bowl this year, I think that would be sick.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised that we came to agreement here. Again, I just want to say I don't care what my Super Bowl matchup is. I think any one of them has awesome storylines and incredible matchups. So we're very fortunate to have these 4 teams remaining. I
agree. Couldn't agree more. I think these 4 teams are very fun. A lot of big picture storylines, a lot of fascinating like micro players, and that's why when you go to the Super Bowl, there's 2 weeks of content. You get to find out a lot of cool things about the teams. And that's why I put the Chiefs as my bottom 2, because like I mostly know what's going on there. I want to hear some stuff about the Commanders and certainly the Bills and even the Eagles too, because they are they're a well-built team, and there's a lot of fascinating little role players that they have there that could be, Zach Bond and all these guys. Like, let's hear more about those players. So yeah, man,
the Eagles coming all the way back from where they had sunk last year. It is also really that's just kind of stirring and exciting.
Yeah, they're a pretty damn good franchise that they've got over there in Philadelphia. But with that exercise in the books, that is going to do it for today's show. Andy, appreciate you, buddy, for jumping on another playoff review. And like I said, could not be more impressed and proud of your maturity to send Jaden Daniels to the Super Bowl here, as Caleb Williams is, doing. Well, he was on the St. Brown podcast. They've got more time to do that now that they're both on vacation.
Ouch. Yeah. I like good quarterback play. I don't know. It's a weakness of mine, I guess. It doesn't bother me to see Jaden Daniels playing really well. No.
First human being on planet Earth that has said, my weakness is I like good quarterback play. I also like good quarterback play. And we're going to be talking about some more good quarterback play on Thursday, when we will be back with Dalton Del Don to preview the conference championship round. Going to be absolutely fantastic. Can't wait to see these 2 matchups. Man, football rules. Until then, we are out.